Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. We finally have competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Back kind of into the swing of things, and with it there's a lot of interesting changes that we're seeing. We just had YCS Sao Paulo over in Brazil this past weekend, and it was really interesting to see some changes to how the game is compared to what we were seeing just a few weeks ago, especially with something like Unchained being such a surprisingly strong deck. We also have YCS Vancouver next weekend, which Tombox and myself will both be working at, so if you guys do catch us before or after the event, or while we're on break, you can come by and say hi. But for now, let's jump into today's episode. Alright, so kicking things off, we're taking a look at Tour Guide from the Underworld. Specifically here, we're going to pay attention to the card's lower rarity printings. Tour Guide is a very old card, but is actually one of the more iconic monsters in the game. Back when this card was a secret rare only, I think it was like $200 per copy. That was just before I got into playing the game, but I've been told by people just how amazing this card was. Of course, I would later use it in like Dark World to make Levier the Sea Dragon, but for a while, Tour Guide was used as a very popular engine, granting decks access to an entire rank 3 toolbox, including cards like Levier, Zenmaines, and Leviathan Dragon. On summon, this card summons a level 3 fiend monster from your deck, but negates its effect pretty straightforward. Now this card hasn't seen play for many years. I think it was last used in Burning Abyss back in the Duelist Alliance era, but for now this card is seeing usage in the Unchained strategy. You can use it to summon out Fiendish Rhino Warrior and link into the Unchained Yama. This allows you to use Rhino Warrior to send Shiyama from your deck to the graveyard to use afterwards as an extender. Really simple, but it's actually a really strong play, and this past weekend at the YCS we definitely saw what Unchained can do. I believe that out of the 12 decks in the top 4, since it was a 3v3 event, there were like 5 or 6 different Unchained decks there, so really strong representation from the deck that just got a few new support cards in Duelist Nexus. I actually tried the deck out myself this past weekend, and the deck's really strong with some crazy extenders. I went X0-1 with my draw being actually against Tombox. Anyways, the low rarity printings of Tour Guide are starting to creep up since it has been a while since Tour Guide has seen any sort of usage. The common printing we got in one of the structure decks is actually $4 to $5 now, as are the gold rare versions from Maximum Gold. And then from there we also have, worth noting, the Ultras, one from Duelist Saga and then the alternate art from Duel Overload. Each of those is going for between $8 to $10 right now. Of course, the secret rares and alties are going to be crazy expensive because of how iconic of a card Tour Guide has been in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. If you guys happen to have like maybe some of the old super rare Tour Guides that came out in the old Hanzo tin over a decade ago, they might be worth digging up because they are probably worth some money again. One other card related to the Unchained archetype I want to mention here, even though it technically doesn't have the Unchained name, it's Abomination's Prison. So this card is an absolutely crazy card for the Unchained archetype. Usually for archetype specific cards, the searchers are good, but this is just on another level. Abomination's Prison searches for any Unchained card, not just a monster, so you can search for one of the traps if you want to be able to blow it up. The other thing is that this card doubles as a summon from the deck when it's destroyed while it's set. So if you open 2 copies, this card isn't actually dead weight. Unchained did really well out of nowhere at the YCS Sao Paulo this past weekend, so people have been really digging into the Unchained cards. I think we covered this card around 4 weeks ago, and the prices have jumped significantly yet again. For the original secret rare prints from Chaos Impact, they were around $20 to $25. They are now up to $35 per copy. And then for the Megatin Ultras, they were down at around $10 to $12. They're now up to $25 themselves as well. Another crazy price spike, but I guess it is reasonable given how dominant of a performance they put up at the YCS. I don't really see this card getting a reprint within the next few months. I think it will down the road eventually, but Unchained just sort of went crazy out of nowhere, so it might be a while before the card gets slotted into another reprint set. Definitely a 3 of if you guys want to play Unchained, and fortunately, the rest of the deck is relatively affordable, but unfortunately you will have to suck it up and buy 3 copies of this card if you want to run the deck. Up next is admittedly a pretty random card. It's Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast. So this card is basically a vanilla monster. It lets you summon a Baphomet and Gazelle when it's destroyed, but not the retrains, just the originals, so you probably won't need to use this card's effect. However, this is actually something that some Chimera players are using in their extra decks alongside the new spell card from Duelist Nexus, Fusion Armament. So Fusion Armament allows you to reveal Chimera, the King of Phantom Beasts, which is the new one, to summon a Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast, from your extra deck. The card shown here, since the new one's name is treated as the old one while it's on the field or in the graveyard, and Armament lets you summon a card whose material name is named on the revealed card specifically. This is actually a pretty useful tech because it allows decks running the Chimera engine to still have interaction with the opponent when they get hit with Dark Ruler No More. With Cornfield Kotal and Mirror Sword Knight in your graveyard, they have effects that can only be used while Chimera is on the field, so even if your opponent uses Dark Ruler on you to stop your other cards, you aren't stuck sitting there unable to do anything. I don't know how great of a strategy this is. Obviously, it depends on what other engines you're combining with the Chimera cards to see if your opponent would even side in Dark Ruler No More. And honestly, I don't think Dark Ruler No More is even a great card this format, but we've seen the engine try to be used with other different archetypes, so this could be a viable strategy depending on what it's mixed with. Anyways, the vanilla Chimera has a few different low rarity printings, so just finding a copy to use is pretty easy. However, the super rares from Legendary Collection Yugi's World are actually quite difficult to find, so one copy is going to run you between $15 and $20 right now. The Chimera engine is really popular, but with the cards being honestly just like really cheap and in low rarities from Duelist Nexus, I don't think it's necessary to go and bling out the package. Just offload the supers if you can find someone who's willing to pay up for them, and pick up a common copy for yourself to use. On to the next one, we have Heeda the Fire Charmer Ablaze. So Heeda is the Fire Link 2 Charmer and carries pretty standard effects for all of the Charmer monsters. You need to use a Fire monster to make it, but while it's on the field you can summon a Fire monster from your opponent's graveyard, and if it's destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effect, you can search for a Fire monster from your deck with 1500 or less defense points. This card hasn't really been used very much. Obviously the Dark and Light ones are the best ones, and the Earth one has seen a bit of play as well, but the Fire one hasn't been that great. Now, however, I think players are looking to the Fire Charmer because of their Rescue Ace strategy. They just got 2 new support cards in Duelist Nexus, but the deck hasn't really managed to find competitive success yet. It was basically nowhere to be seen at YCS Sao Paulo. However, with the upcoming release of the Diabellstar cards in Age of Overlord, a lot of players think that Rescue Ace will become one of the format's best decks. Over in the OCG, Rescue Ace Diabellstar is probably the best deck in the game right now, and is currently the deck to beat. Heeda can be a Link 2 monster to use in the extra deck, even though you don't go into the extra deck all that often, since you can link into it with a monster stolen from your opponent with Triple Tactics talents and one of your other fire monsters, and you can take a card from the opponent's graveyard in the mirror match as well and still be able to use its on-field effect. Now, oddly enough, Heeda is the only Charmer Link monster that did not get an ultra rare upgrade in the Megatins from its year. That's right, for some reason it was a common card, whereas all the other Charmers have gotten ultra rare upgrades. It does also have the rare maximum gold printing, but in terms of holo printings, the only ones we have are the Starlight, obviously pretty expensive, and then the super rare from OTS Tournament Pack 10, which used to be only a couple of dollars but has now moved up to the $6 to $7 mark. Definitely an extra deck monster that is worth noting. If you want your deck to be all holo and Heeda is the last piece you need, you might want to grab it sooner rather than later while it's still in the single digits, because I expect this card's price to continue to trend upwards as we get closer to the release of Age of Overlord, as Rescue Ace threatens to be one of the best decks in the game. Onto a really random one here, we have King Tiger Wang. I think we talked about this card a bit before, but this card is a level 4 beast monster that came out back in Pharaonic Guardian. It's basically a floodgate monster, which says that any monster summoned with 1400 or less attack points is destroyed. Really simple card here, but actually, this card can be really annoying to deal with. If you're on something like Fluwandereeze or Sprite, this card might make it impossible for you to play the game completely. Well, now this card is actually seeing a little bit of side deck play, I believe primarily in decks that use the Chimera engine. Because this is a beast monster, it has a bit more synergy since you can use it to make Chimera the King of Phantom Beasts as a fusion material if you really needed to. Now with King Tiger Wang, this card has never actually gotten a legitimate holo printing like a Super or Ultra. The closest thing we've got is a Starfoil rare, but other than that, all of its printings are random commons or rares. At the same time, its last printing was in that battle pack, so this card hasn't seen a reprint in more than a decade, so any version of the card that you find is actually going to cost you between $10 to $20 each. If you guys might have this in your bulk, it's definitely worth digging out and trying to offload now. It's also something to keep an eye on in GOAT decks, since it's a really solid tech choice in Beast Beatdown decks as well. Alright, so I think I'm going to need you guys' help with this one. It's number 35 Ravenous Tarantula. This is a generic rank 10 Xyz monster that is actually pretty good on the surface. It's a 0/0, but it boosts your monster's stats, including itself by the difference between you and your opponent's life points, and when your opponent special summons, it burns your opponent for 600 damage as long as you have material on this card, and on top of that, you can detach a material from this card to blow up all monsters on your opponent's field with attack points less than this card's attack points. Overall, it is pretty niche, but I guess I could see how this card could be situationally useful and you might want to go into it. The problem I have right now is that I don't see exactly where it is that this card is being used to cause this card to jump in price. There aren't really any rank 10 decks in the game right now unless you think that Eldritch is still a relevant deck. Other than that, I can only think that this might have been bought out just in case Tistina becomes really strong after its second wave of support in Age of Overlord, but obviously that's just speculation and we don't have any sort of information about it yet. But yeah, this card is now a $12 card on TCG Player. I do think last week it was as high as 15, but people have gradually relisted their copies back onto the market. But yeah, I'm not really sure about this one, but if you guys do know, make sure that you let me and everyone else know down in the comment section. And finally guys, just a really quick note here, we have to look at rare Droll and Lockbirds from Tactical Masters. I think everyone knows what Droll and Lockbird is. This card is being played in so many different decks right now because it stops your opponent from doing any searching at all. Honestly, it's a really crazy hand trap that just rotates in and out of various formats depending on the tech cards and the strategies that are being used. This card got a rare reprint in Tactical Masters, and back then, you could get this card for like 50 cents to $1. I remember being at locals. Every time someone would throw out their Tactical Masters bulk from opening a pack, I would check for Drolls and I would keep them, and people just thought it was crazy unnecessary because it finally got so many printings and would be only worth $1 or so forever. Well, now we've moved into a Droll heavy format, and this card kind of feels like the new Ash Blossom or Allure of Darkness or Super Poly, the sort of thing where no matter how many reprints it gets, those cheap things will always find a way to become worth a few dollars. I don't really have much to say about this one, I just wanted to point it out to you guys because it is worth some money now. If you guys did open some Tactical Masters, you might want to go through it one more time to dig your copies of these out since they are moving on TCG Player at just over $5 per copy. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's video. I'm actually really excited for the YCS in Vancouver next weekend, guys. We've never had a YCS here in my hometown, so it's really great that we are on the map now. Hopefully it's the first of many more to come, but I'll be busy prepping a lot of this week, so we'll see if we do manage to squeeze another Market Watch or something in there somewhere. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure that you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.